Hey, it's Slay, and this is my first vlog sitting in my corner, so hopefully this works out okay. So anyone that's close to me knows that for the last, it's been about a year. It's actually taken me a year. It's taken me a year to read this series, at least. I had to take extensive month-long breaks between the books to ensure I didn't drown in the knowledge that nothing I do will ever be as popular as this, and this, I don't want to say dumpster fire, because I'm not here to be mean, but and I don't want the romance community to come after me, so I'm going to say overhyped erotica series. And I'm pretty sure you know which one I'm talking about. I know I'm late to the party because the controversy for this happened, when was this? When did this last one actually come out? I am not having trouble turning the pages because they're sticky, okay? Ooh, shit. I'm really behind the times. Oops. Okay, so anyway, I am late to the party for the 50 Shades of Grey phenomenon. Everyone has said almost everything there is to say about the contents of the infamous 50 Shades series. That's why I'm going to focus on 3 discussion topics outside of the problematic characters in repetitive writing. Although you know I want to talk about them, maybe I'll do something like it in the after credits if just to get it out of my system. This is a disclaimer. I don't prefer romance novels for writerly reasons, but I am not here to bash its tropes right now. I do enjoy the occasional cutesy exchange and lovemaking scenes, so don't come at me. I am here to talk about the specific series, not because it's a romance or because it's erotica. I forced myself to read it because I was fascinated by the popularity it accumulated. It was arguably a phenomenon whether it deserved it or not. And when that shit hits the proverbial mainstream fan as it did, I just had to have myself a whiff. Let's be real. I went nose deep and that smell ain't coming out for a while. I'm disgusting. So, the 3 things that I want to talk about are fan fiction, pacing, and honestly, dashed expectations, but not over what you would expect. First, let's start with the fan fiction discussion, debate. I don't know, people tend to have very strong opinions one way or the other about fan fiction, and I am opinionated, but I'm opinionated while sitting on the fence. I'm an opinionated fence sitter, thus defined by my willingness to see fanfiction as a form of flattery as long as it's not getting monetized. Authors should just let it be. I would like to highlight the idea of monetization here for further reference in a minute. However, on the other side of the fence that I'm sitting on, I think fanfiction, like all literature, should adhere to some sort of standards. Just because it's fanfiction doesn't mean you don't have to edit and you can just write whatever garbage you want. You can't just make up. Okay, I told myself I was not going to get triggered, but I do. Happy place. I'm just gonna say it. I'm gonna get it out of my system. You can't make up whatever shit you want about previously formed characters. There's a certain amount of thought that needs to go into it, is what I'm trying to say. Headcanon is fun and thoughtful and stimulating. Smut is not. Gender bends and playing with sexual alignment can be fun, and can arguably be used to highlight aspects of characters' personalities in an interesting way. But you fucking can't just write literally any dumb, horny shit you want and paste the lovingly crafted characters of an author into it for no reason. Because what's the point then? Why use them and their names? Write whatever you want. You don't have to attach it to a well-known franchise if you're just going to bastardize everything that made it good in the first place. That was a summary of where I stand on fan fiction. Fairly open but adamant about quality and consistency. As anyone who knows anything about the 50 Shades of Grey series is aware that it started as a fan fiction of Twilight. E.L. James originally wrote a 800 whatever page fan fiction of Edward that got split into the first 2 50 Shades books. As someone who has read the Twilight series as a teenager but not read any of the Master of the Universe fan fiction, and just read all painstaking volumes of the 50 Shades series, I have one defense for E.L. James in all of this, which is, can everyone just shut the fuck up about it starting as a fan fiction? Please? I wasn't one of those people who fawned over Twilight in the 2000s. I consumed them so I could have a point of reference and literally just a conversation with any of the other girls my age, because apparently that's the only thing that was worth talking about. But I find myself in high defense of Twilight now that I'm older and now that I've read this. Sure, Twilight was problematic in many ways too, because of the relationship dynamics, but even comparing it to the fuckery, I didn't say kinky fuckery, in the 50 Shades series is an insult to Stephenie Meyers. She didn't ask to get associated with this shit. And as much as it's an interesting topic about 50 Shades' origins, that knowledge has nothing to do with either of the series by the end, or the finished products is what I'm trying to say. Unless you want to say it bolstered 50's success, which it did, arguably. You could pick them apart and align tropes, or plot points, or characters, all you want. But 50 Shades of Grey is a poorly paced erotica novel about humans, and Twilight is a young adult romance fantasy about vampires. They are different enough that as much as I did not enjoy 50 Shades, and I do not love Twilight, these series should not be compared to each other unless you're writing a video essay on ridiculously popular romance series. That is the only defense I have for 50 Shades. I respect good fan fiction, and I believe that 50 Shades as a final product is not. And what it started as was not good fan fiction in the first place. So you see how it ties back? So just like the shitty fan fictions that don't have anything to do with the canon of what they were supposed to be based on, 50 Shades should not be called a fan fiction, and it should not be aligned with Twilight. I stand on my fence. Do not degrade something because of its nature, degrade it because of its quality. So this is unfortunate because I just moved across the country and I had to select from a handful of books to take with me, and surprise, surprise, the first two 50 Shades books did not make the cut. I threw the third one in the water bottle sack part of my carry-on and just hope for the best. So it's the only one that I have with me. And if you're curious which ones did make the cut, it's just everything right there. I couldn't take a whole lot. I know it always looks really good when booktube people hold up the book that they're reading beside them, and unfortunately, unless I'm doing those ones or I'm getting it from the library in the future, everything else is going to be on Kindle and it's not going to look as aesthetically pleasing as somebody... Observations. So anyway, I only have the third one for exact reference because I'm not going to waste any more money on the series than I already have. I bought a lot of them at a library used book sale for like $5 collectively, and I almost even regret that. I was giving the money to the librarian, and already knowing 50 Shades had such a reputation, I felt the need to justify myself buying them to her. So it kind of went like this. Puts books on counter. Lady looks at the books. Me, really anxious. I'm a writer. They're just for research. I'm not really a romance person. To which she didn't even respond, and I left the building as much an idiot as I went in. I would like to thank... I don't know, which god do I even pray to? I'd like to bless Kinnereth and RK that the third book was more tolerable than the other two. Honestly, the second one was the worst. It had no plot, and the pacing around what was supposed to be the plot was so poorly done. Yes, it is primarily seen as erotica, but it's also marketed as a romance series. So if not by the author or the company, then by the fans? I had at least 4 women in the place that I worked that said it was a good book. Like, a good book. Erotica doesn't have to be a book. It could just be sex scene after sex scene like 50 Shades basically is. But people think this is a book. But a book requires plot and development. In the second book, the main threat or plot point is supposed to be Layla. Layla is an ex-submissive of Christians gone hostile towards Anna, his new, let's be real, conquest. She haunts a couple scenes as a stranger who Anna meets in the street and a shadow in their bedroom. But when she finally appears in the apartment with a gun, the conflict is resolved in a couple pages. Christian goes all Dom voice on her, and that's all they need to defuse the situation in the first place. So it really undercuts all of the tension that was being built the entire time. Not that there was much. My voice is getting dry, and my will to live is leaving me. I need a drink. Those are so good. Why are those so good? Is not fair. So the next event in the second book is Anna almost being sexually assaulted by her boss. She sacks him, and he gets fired. None of the book-defining scenes are very long. Every sex scene tops them in about threefold, and this is argued as acceptable by fans because those sex scenes are, from Anna's point of view, a bonding experience with Christian and a release from the stress of those oncoming encounters. But as much as those events should be impactful, they don't actually change the characters' decisions or their personality. By the end of the series, Christian remains possessive, and Anastasia remains an enabler. In the third book, the last bits makes it feel like everything finally got flipped on its head, and they're different, they're in a healthy relationship, and that doesn't just happen. I'm getting off topic. Most infuriating part of the series was the end of the second book. A chapter ends with Christian getting in a helicopter crash and Anna getting the news. It takes, and I shit you not, two pages from that happening to Christian strolling in the door perfectly fine afterwards. Like, he couldn't have got scarred up or been lost for a week. Just imagine if he got lost in the forest and he was food deprived and it brought up all of his childhood trauma. Maybe he just acquires a fear of flying. But no, everything is cool and they get engaged and only knowing each other basically a month because life is too precious. They just have to get engaged in a month. All of those other options I mentioned that could have happened to Christian during this climax would have been good character development, or at least things which forced the characters to change, and I think it would have been truly revolutionary to see Christian Grey crippled and trying to deal with his possessive personality with those limitations. But nah, we're not that deep here. I wanted to make a pie chart of the plot happening / conflict and the sex scenes and then the miscellaneous. I don't have the books with me, and at this point I don't have the will to flip through all of the pages and write this down. But if I did, it would look like I don't have a piece of paper. But if I did, it would literally only be about 2%. 2% of the book was spent on actual conflict and plot resolution. Overall, my second point boils down to the fact that this is not a book. This is a sex scene filler. This book is just a sex scene filler. I don't know how else to put it. It is full of filler. If you watch a lot of anime, you know what I'm talking about when an entire fucking season is just filler. It doesn't do anything. If you take out the sex and the anticipation of it for the sake of just getting readers as wet as possible, there isn't enough left to make a book. It would probably be like less than 50 pages, like 50 pages max. My god, just if anybody sees this and they have the time and the will, can you just like literally cut out everything in 50 Shades? See how long the book actually is? That would be awesome. And I think that is part of the problem why I don't like romance novels as much as other ones. But I have, to this day, and amazingly still in defense of Twilight, have not read anything as full of nothing as 50 Shades of Grey.